cold mountains, which are near a small and quiet town called Snow Hollow in Utah, United States. We see a couple, PJ Palfrey and Brianne, arriving at a rented cabin to spend a weekend, and they are very excited about it. At dusk, the two go out to dinner at a bar, and PJ reassures his girlfriend about their dog, saying that an acquaintance of theirs will take good care of the animal. Then, PJ notices two men speaking insultingly to each other and feels bothered by what he hears, so he tries to act tough and confront one of them, named Jeremy, saying things to belittle them. However, the other man who was with him asks Jeremy to leave. Soon after, they exit, and Brianne scolds PJ for his behavior, and PJ apologizes. After they finish dinner, with an awkward ending, the two return to the cabin. Brianne goes outside to look for the hot tub while PJ in the kitchen plans to propose that night. Later, the two take a bath in the warm water outside, and Brianne shows affection for her boyfriend. After a while, PJ goes inside to take a hot shower and prepare for that night, while Brianne is still outside. Then she hears the howls of a wolf and, looking to the side, sees something that paralyzes her. PJ hears a strange noise and leaves the bathroom to see where his girlfriend is, but she does not respond. When he goes outside, he is faced with a horrifying scene. His girlfriend is dead, her body is torn apart, and next to her is the huge footprint of an animal. He then calls the police to come to the scene. The next day, a man named John speaks to a group of people seeking rehabilitation for alcoholism. He says he is an alcoholic and has had this dependence for a long time, stating that some nights he feels very angry and has insane thoughts, like taking a bulldozer and running over other people's lawns, not to hurt them, but to be noticed. Suddenly, he is notified of something in Cold Hollow. We soon find out that he is a police officer and has been called to the crime scene. There, he meets a sheriff named Hadley and his partner, Julia. Hadley is shocked by what he sees, as something like this has never happened in his area before. They take the sheriff to their car and look worriedly at the crime scene. Moments later, the sheriff talks to a reporter and says that they need not worry, as incidents in their city only happen every 2 years, and that this was an isolated case and they are already behind the suspects. The sheriff goes to his office, and John, who is his son, reassures him that he did well that day. Hadley tells his son that during his long service, he has never seen a body in that state. John says this is just another murder case and that he will go after the culprits. Officer Julia interrogates Jeremy, who tells his version of the night before. He talks about the argument he had with the victim's boyfriend, but that it has nothing to do with what happened. In another location, we meet Hannah, a ski instructor, directing a group of people on the slopes. Moments later, she talks to some people and looks strangely at someone in front of her. That night during dinner, Julia analyzes the case of Brianne's death, looking at the photos taken of the body. Later, at night, with the moon still full, Hannah goes to her car to leave when she hears something like a distant howl. She continues looking in the direction the sound came from, saying nothing. She goes to her car and hears noises again, but now closer. Suddenly, something appears in front of her and scared, she runs. Unable to hide inside the car, she tries to dodge the creature to avoid being caught, but without any way out, she attempts to run away. But unfortunately, the thing violently catches her and pulls one of her arms away. Then we see this monstrous humanoid figure that resembles a werewolf, completely hairy, tall, and with a wolf's head. Then it finishes off its victim. The next day, John's colleagues call him again, and upon arrival, he sees another pitiful scene. John thinks it is still a serial killer, but Gutierrez says they are saying it could be a big bear. In a cafeteria, John and the other officers, named Gutierrez, Bo, and Chavez, talk about the case and discuss the possibility of it being an animal. Then Officer Gutierrez says they should let the feds handle the case. John, for his part, insists they should handle it themselves, but Gutierrez insists it could be a big bear. The situation upsets John because it is too much for him. To make matters worse, they learn that no one can identify the victim since her head has been removed, but that through fingerprint analysis, they will soon find out who she is. John, in his new role filling in for his father, has a lot of headaches and is impatient with his colleagues. The next day, he goes to the deceased's wake and is questioned about where the police are, who are not doing anything about it. A man then yells at John, telling him to find the person responsible for these crimes quickly. Once home, John looks in his pantry, struggling not to go there, but unable to resist. He goes up and falls into the temptation to drink alcohol again. The next day, Julia worries about her friend. prepares some things for him, and takes them to John, who is calmer. His father suggests they call someone with experience in animals, but John doesn't want to believe it's an animal. Chavez says it could have been a wolf, even the beast from the werewolf stories. However, John still insists that it is not something like that, as he believes it is a guy he is going to find and kill. Chavez states he has animal tracks at the scene, but John, psychologically unbalanced, insults his partner, who is furious with him. Hadley calls John to talk and advises that the team needs him with his head on straight. After his father leaves, John asks Julia for the coroner's report. Julia says they discovered that the victim had a dog, but it was found dead at the scene, along with the hairs of a wolf. They then deduce that a pack of gray wolves arrived at the crime scene first. However, the bite marks are not similar to those of a wolf and are very large, as well as the spacing of the footprints indicating it is a very large animal, like a big bear or something that could immobilize the victim with a single bite. Julia points out that the killer leaves no clues behind, which makes it even harder to find him. John goes to talk to his daughter and shows concern for her safety. She, however, says she still has pepper spray with her. Jenna, noticing that her father is very worried about the city and that he is acting differently, says that he is not the only one responsible for protecting the city. He justifies himself by saying he wanted to show effort and dedication, that he knows how to earn a medal for it. Jenna, knowing her father's story, asks him if he is not acting this way because of his mother, who abandoned him when he was still a child, and that maybe if he catches who is committing these crimes, it will somehow show his mother that she was wrong. John replies that it's not about that, and then says goodbye. The next day, inside the car, he talks to Julia and asks if she also believes that it is a man responsible for the screams. Julia replies that, yes, even though they have the footprints of an animal, they should also ask about the other option that Chavez thinks it is. Suddenly, something is thrown against the car, scaring both of them. When they get out, Julia says it was a can of beer, but they can't find who threw it. Then we see a wolf going to a trailer where an unknown man lives, consuming illicit substances. Moments later, John and Julia go to PJ's house, where he says he left town to clear his mind and claims he did not kill his girlfriend. PJ is also dissatisfied with the results of the police, but Julia asks if he remembers anything suspicious on the night of the murder. PJ says no, and that he hasn't seen any creatures either, and he is tired of being asked so many questions with no results. Julia then hands over some of Brienne's belongings, and PJ cries as he remembers his deceased girlfriend, being comforted by his mother. Julia leaves him, and before John also leaves, PJ asks that if they find someone accused, they should not arrest him, but kill him. In a restaurant, a woman named Liz is with her daughter waiting for the food to arrive when a man comes in and starts to strike up a conversation with her, praising her and her little daughter. At one point, he talks about her car outside, and she finds this very suspicious and decides to complain to the clerk about why they didn't remove the onion, but actually asks her to call the police. As the man leaves the place, we see Liz talking to the police and saying that the man was tall and smelled like a morphine-filled room. The police begin questioning people close to the victims and also to Paul, the owner of the house where the couple, PJ and Brienne, were staying. One of the interviewed says that when he was out of the house, he saw something big, but among all those questioned, nothing concrete was said that gave any clue as to who the murderer was. When John releases Liz, another woman enters the room and claims to know who the Snow Hollow werewolf is. John goes to his father and finds out that he has a serious health problem and still wants to continue working. John then becomes more stressed because he has many worries, and now his father does not want to take care of himself, thinking that what he has is silly. John says he cannot handle so much stress and that waking up in the middle of the night thinking someone is calling him to tell him his father is dead won't help at all. On a full moon night, Liz returning home comes across a deer that was in the middle of the road. She recklessly gets out of the car, taking the gun and going to find out what happened to the animal. She notices there is a blood-stained human handprint on the animal. Then, hearing something, Liz turns to look at her daughter inside the car. At that moment, she is terrified to see a monstrous creature next to her vehicle. She even shoots the monster several times, but to no avail. Unfortunately, both mother and daughter are killed by the beast. The next day, John goes to the location and notices that someone went back there and removed the animal's skin where the man's fingerprints were. Angry about all this, John is at yet another funeral for the victims, made by the same killer. Back home, he helps his daughter to bed, and after that, goes for a drink still frustrated that he hasn't resolved what's going on. John then drinks a few beers and, not satisfied, goes to the bathroom and strangely drinks mouthwash. When he returns to the kitchen, he hits his head on the microwave and falls onto the stove. The next morning, we see the same unknown man burning a body, and on his arm is a tattoo of a wolf. John, on the other hand, already awake, goes to the library to research more about the legend of the werewolf, which his friends believe to be responsible for the deaths of the victims. He learns that this story dates back to the Middle Ages, where the townspeople found a woman's body, similar to the one John had seen recently. The people did not believe that men could do that. He spends the night researching the subject and ends up falling asleep. He begins to hallucinate dead women and suddenly wakes up to a librarian calling to him. John meets with Julia and tells her what he learned, saying that these crimes could not have been committed by a man, but by a monster. He also learned that it has nothing to do with magic. It is simply a human who becomes very angry when seeing the full moon shine, which is enough to change their mood. Julia, however, laughs at him upon hearing this. John goes on to question why the victims are always female and never male. Then he is called to listen to a message left by a man who spoke with Liz days ago on her phone at work. So he picks up his phone and takes it with him to gather more information. John goes to the place where the man made the calls, but Chavez doesn't find any trace of fingerprints, and, very stressed with work, he yells at his partner and tells him to keep looking for something. The newspaper on TV notifies that a curfew has been ordered in the town of Snow Hollow due to the crimes that have occurred and that have not been solved. Sheriff Hadley advises his police officers how they should behave on that full moon night since he suspected that the killer would appear that night. He tells everyone to be careful, as that would be a dangerous hunt. After everyone leaves, Hadley feels sick. John wants to call a doctor, but the sheriff says he's fine and wants to go with them. However, John talks to his father and says he doesn't want him to be in that dangerous situation because of his illness. So in the end, he accepts John's request and lets him go without him. Before leaving, John asks the police secretary to call an ambulance to take the sheriff. Then he runs off in search of finding the killer or whatever it is. Meanwhile, Jenna, like a good part of the silly young women her age, shows herself to her boyfriend Brock on his cell phone in a video call and then calls him to come to her house because she was alone. He goes, and soon the two start kissing inside a car. But then he sees a lady and decides to stop what they were about to do. When Jenna goes to see who the lady was, she realizes that she had been calling the police and was alerting the couple about something she was seeing that was worrying her. Then, suddenly, Jenna notices the werewolf, which soon attacks the car with monstrous strength. John is alerted to an occurrence and goes to the scene. Meanwhile, Jenna and her boyfriend are attacked by the creature and, being about to be caught, luckily for them, John manages to arrive just in time and soon shoots the creature that was on top of the car. The creature runs away while John continues shooting, but when he hears his daughter, he sees her and goes to her to help her. However, her boyfriend has fled the scene. John worries about the mission's objective and fights with his daughter for not being as safe at home as he had told her to be. However, she is upset about not having a healthy relationship with. Her father complains about his absence throughout her life and asks him to take her to the hospital as she is bleeding. John hears shots before leaving and is not going to give reinforcement to his companion who asked for it. Moments later, Julia arrives at the scene with other police officers, and when she gets there, she finds a dead police officer, shocked by the scene. After hearing the news, John is on guard duty at the hospital where his father and daughter are, and looking at Jenna's cell phone, he finds out about her dead-end relationship with Brock. Then he goes to the young man's house, enters the room, and starts attacking him. His mother, who is also there, tries to help by using pepper spray on him, later discovering that it was Officer John. He then goes to the refrigerator and throws milk in his face to relieve the burning in his eyes. After that, he returns to the hospital and Julia is there with Jenna. Soon they tell him that Hadley, his father, has passed away. John, after that, returns even more into his addiction and is no longer accepted in the Alcoholics Anonymous group. Jenna returns home to find her drunk father all dirty, and then she helps him up to his room where he mourns the loss of his father. We then return to the unknown man with the tattoo of a wolf on his arm. He injects something into his body and then drops dead. The following morning, Julia informs John that they have found a suspect with characteristics that Liz described. Soon, the man's body is brought to the medical examiner. They find that the information matches up, and for the doctor, that man was the killer and says that even his daughter could solve this case. Confronted with this by the sheriff, John fires the doctor. Julia then takes him home, and inside the car, he tells her that it was his wedding anniversary and is sorry for having such a difficult life. When John was about to get out of the car, Julia tells him that he should care about what is really important, and that if he wanted to be the sheriff officially, he should behave like one. After that, John goes back to rehabilitation as he had started drinking again and apologizes to some people for his behavior. Julia, doing some research, gets a call from PJ saying that in the things they returned to him, an object similar to a large old needle came with it, so he decided to warn them as this is not his thing. Quickly, Julia realizes they missed something and hangs up the phone. Meanwhile, John goes to Paul's house to return some belongings. Paul asks him to wait, but John enters and finds him sitting. Paul invites him for coffee and asks him a little about the case that seems to have been solved for everyone. John says that the possible killer passed by the police, and unfortunately they left the trail blank. John says he has to go back as he is on duty, but outside he thinks for a moment and notices something. He returns, and Paul again does not open the door. John then asks him how tall he is, just to check as he didn't have that information. Paul hesitates about the order and slowly stands up, and soon we see that he is more than 2 meters tall. Then he quickly closes the door, and John realizes that Paul was an unknown man who had followed Liz. He calls for reinforcements, but seeing that it will take time, he breaks into the house himself. And in one of the rooms, he finds cutting tools on a table. Then, John is surprised by Paul, who lifts him easily and wounds him with a knife, showing himself to be very fierce. When backup arrives, Paul leaves John and flees the scene. John takes his gun and tries to follow Paul, who surprises him again. Only this time we see who the creature really is. Paul actually dresses in clothing similar to that of a wolf, and due to his size, scares the victims and then kills them. John, even wounded, chases Paul through the forest, but Paul knocks him down and punches him several times. Luckily, Julia arrives just in time and shoots Paul, who falls to the ground. John, having his decision in mind, kills Paul without hesitation. After that, John collapses due to his various injuries, and Julia helps him. Days pass, and we see Julia saying goodbye to Jenna, now being the new sheriff of the town of Snow Hollow. Julia leaves and leaves Jenna with John, who fortunately survived. He emotionally says goodbye to his daughter, who is now going to study ballet at the university, and warns her to take proper care from then on. After that, John leaves the university and goes on with his life.